Welcome back to Brick Gaming YuGiOh. I'm back here with another video today, and this video is going to be the second episode of the YuGiOh podcast. Couldn't speak there for a second, but I'm going to cover a couple of different topics, and to give you kind of an idea of the topics I will cover the new decks in the current meta. I will also cover what the current meta looks like as a whole, and arguably the different best decks. Then I'm going to get into some really good rogue options if you either don't want to play, can't afford, or anything along those lines, like for the best decks. I'll give you like what I think are the best rogue decks. Then also I will be getting into Maximum Gold, my thoughts and opinions on Maximum Gold, as well as like the reprints, prices, stuff like that. And finally I will be talking about future videos, things that you can expect coming up, all that type of fun stuff. So before I get into that, please like, comment, and subscribe. If you're not subscribed, subscribing would mean a lot. It would really help out the channel, and I hope you guys will consider doing so. So let me get right into this first topic. So the new decks I really want to focus on are Mutant and Virtual World. Now for Mutants, I feel like it's really good right off the bat. I'm already playing Mutants because it's really good. It's a rogue deck for sure. I would put at maybe tier 2 or arguably tier 3. It's not going to break into the meta unless it gets better cards, but it's really good against pretty much every single meta matchup. It's arguably good against some other rogue decks, but if you're playing against other rogue, it can go either way. The deck interacts with every single deck extremely differently, so you're not going to get like the same experience from one matchup to another, and that's just in my own personal experience. Next is Virtual World. Virtual World, I would say, is better than Mutants in a lot of ways. I feel like they have differing matchups. Like Virtual World against Mutants, Virtual World should easily get that duel. And I'm not saying that because Mutants is a worse deck. I'm saying that the matchup is horrible for Mutants. The reason being is that Virtual World, they don't care if some of their stuff gets banished, and they have main deck outs to pretty much everything that Mutants do. So unless Mutants get like some really busted support for stuff like that, then sure, Mutants could become the better deck, but it has to be like really good support. And that's the other thing I want to just briefly touch on. Mutants have an issue with both consistency and power, and I'm not saying like their cards aren't powerful, it's just that it's super easy to play around their cards, so they need like another boss monster, maybe something easier to make, or at least a monster in extra deck that extends the plays. Like they need a good extender as well. Or for main deck, they need another search card. I'm talking like a search spell, or even like a search trap if it has maybe one other effect. Something like expansion. If they had another card like expansion that added to hand instead of summoning, that could be really good. And then like some continuous effect that gives like maybe battle protection. And then just more power cards, honestly. I don't think they need any more power cards like that are big boys for the main deck. I think it's extra deck that I'd like to see more stuff for. And that's just my own personal view. I think that can make the deck really busted. Like literally 2 cards and the deck is broken if the cards are good. But if not, the deck is still really solid as is. And then also Virtual World, I kind of want to go back and touch upon this point really quickly. Virtual World, from what I've seen and what I can understand from the deck, it has a pretty good grind game, arguably, and it has a pretty good matchup against like stun or control decks. Really good matchup against that type of stuff. I just think that from what I've heard from friends that play it, is kind of just you get out resources not very good, and some combo matchups can also be bad, especially like tier 1 decks that has a hard time with, arguably. So that's just from my own personal experience and from experience of other people I've talked to about the deck. But yeah, that's just what I've come up with and what other people have come up with for those 2 new decks. And you may be wondering why I'm not talking about Tri-Brigade. I don't know very much about Tri-Brigade. I have literally no interest. I've never seen anyone play it. I haven't played against this. I really don't want to give out an uninformed opinion or uninformed view and then have it be wrong. I want to be correct in like, the information I provide. Number 2, I want to get into current meta. So the current meta, I'm going to talk about the best decks of this format. I'm talking about like someone sneaks in with like some random, like someone sneaks in with Thunder Dragon and tops, and that's not meta. I'm talking about the decks that consistently do well, and those decks are mainly Dragon Link, Infernoble, Eldritch Dogma, and variants of those 2. So anything along those lines, does pretty well right now. I'm going to say that Dogma is a tier 1 engine, but it's not really a tier 1 deck in a lot of ways. I feel like Eldritch Dogma is really good because that helps deal with a lot of issues that both Eldritch and Dogma deal with. But I feel like by themselves, they're just not good. I think they need to be mixed with other decks. And now that is an actual opinion, but on actually like looking at information, Eldritch and Dogma are both still pretty good, but Dragon Link and arguably Infernoble in a lot of ways are killing the current meta. Like Dragon Link is busted, Infernoble is busted, Eldritch, it can be good by itself. Dogma, it can be good by itself on some matchups, but I feel like the two decks just by themselves aren't as good as like what mixed variants would be. And I feel like Dragon Link just kind of blows out any other meta deck at the moment. I feel like that's the best deck to go with. And now of course you could go with like some Dragoon Turbo deck, some variant like that, but I wouldn't really consider that meta since it's not a specific archetype, it's just Dragoon Turbo. And that can be good in some cases, but just not the best option right now, especially since unlike the OCG, the TCG is very different and has a different ban list, different cards, and I feel like Dragoon over there, busted. Over here, not quite, but still pretty much the best boss monster I think we have in the game. And now also that's another opinion, but I think it was pretty good. It just, are you willing to put the bricks into your deck? In a lot of cases, I would say yes, depending on the deck. Now I want to get into some Rogue. Some Rogue decks that I think are good. Now, there are going to be some obvious choices here, just based upon the type of deck profiles I do. First is Thunder. I think Thunder is really good. I think the only problem with Thunder at this point is bricks. If you brick, you lose. But as long as you can get out 2 summons, you're basically guaranteed Dragoon pass. And that, for some decks, can be really hard to beat over, get rid of. So, it's definitely a decent deck. I would say Thunder Dragon, Rogue. And Geist, Altergeist. I really haven't seen much Altergeist videos or discussions recently. Maybe it's just because like I'm not looking in the right places or something like that. Or maybe like the YouTubers I usually check out their content on aren't talking about as much. But I feel like Geist is still really good. And I feel like Geist is pretty much really decent against about everything. I've been testing a lot of Mutants versus Geist in my free time. Because those are like 2 decks that kind of have a similar-ish playstyle. I mean, Mutants are kind of more similar to True Draco than anything, but both decks kind of have the same, like, really good play style, even though it's slightly different, and I kind of was just testing out, like, Mutants versus Altergeist, and honestly, it's a 50-50. I've seen it go both ways, either Geist opening good, but Mutants opening better, or Geist opening really good, and Mutants not opening as good. It all comes down to openings with those 2 decks. It's not like one deck is automatically better than the other, so they're on about the same playing scale for Rogue. So, Geist, really good. I think it's really good, especially against meta. Some meta decks might have some struggles with it. I think Eldritch just straight up loses to Altergeist. And that's just from personal experience. I've never lost to Eldritch playing Altergeist. It is literally impossible. If you know what you're doing, you'll never lose playing Altergeist against Eldritch. Then I also want to bring up Zombies. The reason I want to bring up Zombies is that that's actually pretty fuego. It does a lot of really good stuff. It is consistently medium, and that's not a bad thing at all. A consistently medium deck means that I think, if you're depending on the variant, of course, you can play around Nibiru super easily, you can play around a lot of hand traps super easily. If you know how to sequence your plays, you're looking at doing really well against pretty much every meta deck. And just as an example, Dragon Link, they lose to Zombie World. Infernoble have a hard time with Zombie World. Eldritch, well, of course not. Dogma, of course not. But those 2 decks I just mentioned for Dragon Link and Infernoble against zombies, it's going to be one of those games that you can just steal, especially if you win the dice roll. But even if you don't win the dice roll, you can still win the game if you're playing zombies. So that's just my personal view on that. But there's a lot of evidence to back it up, especially with Zombie World versus Dragon Link being such a big issue for the deck, and as well as Infernoble, since you kind of want to get all your warrior boys out and resolve Isolde, or Isolde, depending on how you pronounce it. So yeah, I think zombies are really good for that, but I think against other rogue decks, a lot of other rogue decks can outclass zombies, depending on the variant. Like, I know that the Hauki Firebrack zombie deck is nuts, super broken, and it can kind of more or less compete better against rogue, but then if you're playing normal zombies, it depends, because you're basically putting in more resources to destroy the meta, but you're not putting in as many resources to destroy like a tier 3 rogue deck. So it really comes down to one of those two things, and it comes down to preference as well. Then I also, finally, for the last rogue deck, I want to mention Unchained. I just saw the 59-man tournament where Unchained won or topped. I didn't watch the full video yet, and I still need to check out the rest, but that was just huge, I think. Unchained actually doing something. That deck has been looked over so much in recently, and I think it's one of the decks that people should give a try as rogue. I have no idea how to play the deck. I have no idea what you do with the deck, so I'm not the best resource for figuring out Unchained type of content, but let's just say the deck is, right now, pretty nuts for a rogue deck, and if it ends up being really good, it might be a deck that I look into. So, yeah, I just want to throw that out there real fast. Really happy to see Unchained, a rogue deck, do so well. Next, for my first topic, I want to get into Maximum Gold. Maximum Gold, I felt like, was a good set. It wasn't super busted or super bad, none of either. And my thoughts and opinions mainly range that, hey, you got some good pickups, some cards got decreased in price, it was more easily attainable for a lot of people. But at the same time, a lot of the stuff was just kind of ridiculous. For example, Golden Lord is now cheap, but all the cards around Golden Lord are now way more expensive. So it kind of puts the deck back up there in price, more than what I would expect it to be after that. But it's also understandable. Eldritch is a good deck. Also, the Dark Magician, Blue Eyes, all that type of stuff, the kind of arguably, I guess, from what I'm hearing from people, short print / the more expensive cards out of the set. I kind of feel like it's ridiculous to, do that with those cards. Like, if I pulled a Dark Magician from it, I don't care about Dark Magician. I can use a common. Or, does it even come as common? That's actually a good question. I don't know if it comes as common. But let's say like an Ultra or like something like that. It doesn't matter to me. But I know that to collectors, it matters a lot. So, I mean, that's cool. Cool for collectors. I don't know about competitive players if it really matters all that much. Next is Imperm. I'm really happy to see Imperm being like a $20 card, which is cool. It's way less expensive, way more accessible. And I would say pick up now, just in case it goes back up later. I would say pick up Imperms now if you don't already have them. I would hope people had them, but I can completely understand. I've been a broke Yu-Gi-Oh player before who literally was playing like a probably like $5, $10 deck at one point, and that's how a lot of my decks were for a very long time. So yeah, I would say pick up Imperm now if you can. If you don't have it, it's a good pickup. And now finally, for the actual rarity of cards, I kind of like it. It looks really good on cards that kind of already have like a goldish hint or a really dark hint. So for example, Bardiche and stuff like that looks really, really good. Bardiche looks amazing. But a lot of other cards just look horrible. Like, I think the new Invoker, like, the new artwork, horrible. The new Phantasme artwork and, like, design, horrible. But, I mean, it makes those cards a lot more easily attainable once again, so that's just kind of more aesthetically, more aesthetic issue, and some cards are more aesthetically pleasing and others are not so much. And now finally getting to my final topic, future videos. Now, of course,